I don't want to start this without my favorite pen. I write all of my scripts now with a actual diamond pen. Welcome, scribes, to Writemas Day I don't know what. Today I want to talk to you about 6 types of strategies that I use for myself personally to get myself to sit down and write. Now, we all know that the hardest part of being a writer is actually sitting down to write and doing the writing part, because even if you sit your butt down into a seat in front of a desk, you know that sometimes the words just do not flow. But I want to talk to you a little bit about how I make sure I get those juices flowing and how I actually make sure I'm in the right state to do my writing. Now, welcome back to my channel, scribes. If you've been here before, nice to see you again. If you are new here, thanks so much for checking this video out. I hope you take your time looking around my channel. I mostly make videos that are aimed at writers who want to go ahead and gain some knowledge, work on their mindset, and just build a healthy foundation as a writer. Now, shout out to a friend who inspired me to do this video, because without his question, I never would have thought about, well, what are the techniques or the things that I do consistently that usually put me in the right headspace to get a bunch of words out. When I did a Write With Me video for you all for Writemas, I realized that with a camera trained on me, I had to focus. You guys were gonna be watching me tap away on my little keyboard, and you guys would see in real time how it was when I was writing. Now, I don't want you to think that I just typed because you needed to see me typing. I did actually write, and I wrote the most that I had written in quite a long time. So it reminded me a little bit more about why I use certain techniques and how that actually helps me just continue to write so I don't overthink anything. Now let's get into how I actually sit down and write. One of the first things that I do when I'm working on a specific writing project is schedule out time. This is the most important thing, and you'll hear me say it on a few other videos, but I really like to do this very big productivity strategy, which is to make sure I'm blocking in time. Now, I used to do this a little bit more heavily before when I had a lot more free time. Now that I've got a full-time job, and I know for some of you, you might be juggling a family and it might be a lot harder to find that free time, but I do make sure that if I know consistently I have certain things that I've got to do for the day, I know when I can schedule in that time for me to write, even if it's an hour or even if it's just a little bit less. Now, yes, I might be feeling tired sometimes. The only thing that I can do is work through that to sit down and write. Outline. I really love to outline, and I outline specifically because if I don't have enough time in the day to do specific writing blocks and not long enough for me to get into the mood and get out what I need to get out onto paper to move my scenes along and complete the project, I outline to make sure that when I am going to sit down, if I have children and I have full-time work and I've got to cook and clean, that outline is there to make sure that I am using my time effectively. If I know what's supposed to happen next, I have a better chance of creating more additional scenes that may not have been written out in my outline, because I know where I'm going and I know what I have to do to get to that moment. I love to outline to make sure that I'm using every bit of my time wisely. And sometimes that even means that if I'm stuck on something, a specific scene that maybe I changed up from my outline and no longer fits the way that I was going to write the next part of my project, I will sit and use that 30 minutes to an hour to, if not write what I'm supposed to write for the story, write an outline. Do a new adjusted outline to make sure I understand when I sit down to write the next time how I'm going to effectively get through that scene and that moment. Now, I know this won't work for everybody. It's okay. If you're not an outliner, I do suggest that you use maybe something like a scene card. And if you don't know what a scene card is, I heavily suggest you go over to Abby's channel. I will link it down below. But usually I use a scene card, and the scene card just sort of tells me what's supposed to happen, why it's supposed to happen, and what's gonna happen afterwards, pretty much. So I really loved the one that I saw from Abby. I don't know her last name right now, and I don't know if that's specifically the name of her channel, but again, I'll link it down below. So yes, I can talk about outlining all day, but if that's not encouraging you to outline, then I do suggest you will have to do a little bit more digging to see what fits your style of writing, because not everybody is going to write the same way. If you don't like to heavily plot and you don't want to plot in the moment either, you are going to struggle with your time. So your time will be a lot longer and you'll have to block out more time. When you start out writing on your own, it's going to be a second full-time job. And if you have already tons of other things that you do, if you have multiple jobs, yes, you will have to find any moment you can. So I do suggest that besides scheduling in the time, you might want to do free writing as well. And I don't mean free writing as in sitting down to just write whatever comes to your mind. I mean free writing as in any time that you can schedule in that time, you're gonna have to do it. So if you are taking a shower, think about your story. If you are washing the dishes, think about your story. Plot something out, write it down quickly. If you're feeding the baby, and I know that usually you want to make sure you're pretty attentive to the baby, but you can even talk out your plot to the baby if it's something that babies can listen to. Just think about all those little extra things that you can do to incorporate thinking about your story, because it's not a lot of the writing part that's the hardest, it's coming up with everything. And that can be done in free time without sitting in front of your laptop. I know that that was a big rant, but I have heard this the most, and that's why I wanted to cover it as much as I could. For those who may have questions about how to schedule time when it's really, really tough to do so. The next thing I like to do is write with people. So if you're not part of a writer's group, don't worry. Get someone else involved, or sit down with the family for a craft time or some sort of arts and craft day, and have everybody kind of sit silently with some music that's calming and learn to structure in that time to do something creative. Everybody has their own thing to do so that you can focus on writing. Maybe it might be a little bit tough to do that in the beginning, but as you commit to a routine, it might get a little bit easier for you to do. I have plenty of creative friends who do like to write in some capacity, and even if they don't feel like they are writers yet, it's really easy to convince them to sit down and write with me. Another thing is too, if I feel like I want to write someplace where I don't feel so isolated, because trust me, I don't like to feel isolated when I write. Even though I mostly write alone, I've learned to get used to writing alone, mostly because it was sort of an insecurity to talk about my writing in public to people. So I started to get used to writing at home, alone, in the quiet of my room. And now what I do is I like to go out to coffee shops, I like to get together with other writers and go different places to sit and have a little write-in. And I also really enjoy now doing a Discord write-in or doing a Twitter write-in. And doing a write-in with multiple people feels really inclusive. It just feels so great. If you can do any kind of thing, a Zoom write-in with your friends, something to that effect, that would be something that could motivate you to go a little bit further. So I definitely suggest it, and it's also great because you can bounce ideas off of each other and really talk about your writing to the point where you may have to talk something out and you can get it resolved right in that moment and continue writing writer's block free. But if I do have to write alone, I like to make playlists. So at the moment, I've got playlists for The Sound of You, and I've got a playlist for The Run and Go. The Run and Go being a feature film that I was writing that's sort of based off of 21 Pilot music, and I listen to all of the music that's supposed to be in my actual script. I listen to that, and that gives me ideas, and it reminds me of how real it can be. So that's something that motivates me highly, especially because I don't know a lot of people who listen to 21 Pilots around me, but I love to listen to them, especially popping them in my ears so that I can just kind of enjoy it on my own and feel like I'm in that world already. My The Sound of You playlist is my playlist for the novel that I wrote in 2019, and that is just a list of things that I could hear if it was a movie, basically. So I love making playlists so that I can go back and just sort of listen to it, vibe to it, and feel like I'm already in that world. I'm just completely immersed in the sound and the feeling and the mood of it. So I highly recommend making a playlist. You can make one on YouTube and you can also make one on Spotify. And my favorite part about it is actually making a poster for it off of Canva. I love making a poster off of Canva so that I can put it onto the soundtrack, or well, I call it soundtrack, but my playlist, I will call my playlist a soundtrack, so the Run and Go soundtrack. Putting a picture to it just makes me feel so motivated. Having it titled the soundtrack to the name or the title of my project invigorates me to feel like if I continue working on this, it can become something. A lot of times you need that self-motivation because there's really no one else who's going to motivate you like you will. So since I've mentioned writing with a group, there's something that I do particularly when I'm writing with a group, and you saw it in my Write With Me video. I use the Pomodoro Method. Now the Pomodoro Method is using small chunks of time and rest in between to make a session so that you can go ahead and study or write through that session for straight 20 minutes, 25 minutes, or however long you set it. That way you have a specific set of time to focus, and then you've got some times to just go ahead and reset and make sure that you are fed and hydrated and have a little bit of a stretching time as well. So make sure to stand up, because what we do in this business, sitting down and writing all the time, can really put a whole toll on your back, your wrist, all of that. So the Pomodoro Method I love so much. And if you like to do writing sprints, which are basically the Pomodoro Method, they are set amounts of time to write and work through consistently without stopping, then you can absolutely find on Twitter a bot that is actually present there, and it does run sprints all year round, not just through NaNoWriMo times. NaNoWriMo also has their own sprinting bot, which is awesome, or actually, rather, they're real people, not sprinting bots. But you can also find a lot of people doing sprinting on Discord servers for writers, or if you are part of NaNoWriMo, there are regional locations that do have their own servers as well. And on the servers, most likely there will be a bot that you will have to enter in the time that you want to write and the specific interval that you want to write, and it's so amazing. I use it all the time. If you don't have access to any of that, don't you worry, because you can set your timer on your phone to go at 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes if you really want. You can absolutely set it on yourself and go ahead and let it run, and once that alarm goes off, that's your break time. So now that you know the Pomodoro Method, you can absolutely use it on your own. It's really a great technique. I highly, highly suggest you try it. The last thing I really like to do is make sure my space is clean. So if I'm in a room where I'm writing, and usually I'm writing in my bedroom at my desk, I usually want to not write first off on the bed. Be at a desk. Be at maybe the kitchen counter, someplace where, I said kitchen counter, be at a kitchen table. Someplace where you're going to be able to set up everything that you need and sit down to write continuously without being bothered by anybody. Usually I like to do this at home on my desk, and it's the perfect setting because it's right next to a window, so I can open up the window if it's during the day, or I can turn on some lights into a very low light setting and I can write. And then of course I've got all of my music right here on my laptop, and I've got some great speakers set up so I can listen to that as loud as I want or on my headphones, however I want. And it's really a perfect setup for me, but I cannot write when my room is a mess, when my desk is a mess. It feels so much better to have everything cleaned up first. So even if you have to go outside of your house, make sure you find a place that's, well lit or lit to your liking. It's clean, it's a good space to fan out at, and it's a place where you feel the most calm at, because you're not going to be able to write in a place where there's tons of mess, there's tons of things that are distracting you. It's just not good for your brain to be thinking about other things that need to be done in this area that you're supposed to be writing in. Ease your mind about sitting at that spot. It really feels nice to be in a location that feels like it's meant for you to have that clarity and be able to really get out really good bits of writing, because your environment can definitely affect your mood, and you want to make sure the headspace that you're in is ready and ripe for writing. So those are the things that actually help me write and help me do it consistently. Thanks for watching, scribes, and I will see you on the next one.